Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast, a production from Empowering Pumps and Equipment as the voice of the pump and related equipment industry. Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charli Matthews, and like always, I'm excited to be here. I'm extra excited because I have had a cold this week, and so I was like, am I going to be able to record this podcast? And I am, so I'm very thankful today. And anytime you start your week off with gratitude is a great week, and I am really, really excited to bring you our guest today, Aaron, aka AW. So you're definitely in the right place to if you're not, I guess get that way to be in the right place to learn and understand how to create change. This is the person that has done a lot of research, and we'll get into that. But AW, go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody.
Well, Charli, thanks for the introduction. My name is A.W. Schultz, or you can call me Aaron. There's a bit of a story why that name comes around, but maybe for another day. But
you can't do that. You'll have to tell us in a minute. But we'll definitely just start with what you do now, and then how did you get into the industry?
So I've got my own consulting practice, and I do trainings primarily in maintenance and liability, but really honing in on the planning and scheduling portions of it. A lot of that comes back through 25 plus years in the manufacturing industry. Coming out of college, I'd always selected that I wanted to go into manufacturing, probably something because I had done when I was in high school, working in a mill in various positions. And then my dad actually, he worked at a utility water company for many years. So undeniably, I think there was some reliability sitting in the back of my head. And, I love doing with math also. So that was something that really resonated in myself, especially when you're doing dissecting and analyzing information that comes about. But I went in college, and then I started working for General Mills for several years, and then transferred over to another job in a medical device. Then I went back to foods for PepsiCo for about 10 years. And then I was brought into a corporate role for another food company. And then the last few years, I've actually been doing consulting for a maintenance reliability company. It was TA Cook, which actually is now owned by Accenture. But like many people, I was affected by COVID. So my position was put on hold for a while. And it kind of resonated for myself that, this is maybe the sign for other things to come, and kind of put my toes in the water. And then later on, I just jumped right in. And I've been doing that now for about, I guess, 2 to 3 years, where I work with a lot of factory leaders on developing processes and bringing up their capabilities of their other systems and processes. A lot of times I circle around the planning and scheduling, because I tend to find that as being the bottom of where to start with. That if you get to those processes working, everything else has fallen in place. So I've been doing that. And then Charli probably alluded to that I'm working on a book, because I've released a couple other books, and they're all technical books on maintenance practices, planning and scheduling. And then I'm kind of doing a research book that I'm currently working on.
Which is where I met you. You
Yes.
were, posting, and of course we have some of the common reliability players. I have to give Rob a shout out. He always connects us. And, reaching out and just talking. So if y'all follow me, which I hope you do, at Charli K Matthews, you would have seen that we had the interview about adaptive work management. And I have to be honest, I had to Google that, and I was like, what is this that we're going to talk about? And what does that mean? But my initial response was exactly like, I think the unique place is like, okay, you've got this team, you actually have to adapt. Things happen, right? The changes happen. What are you going to do? But for you've been interviewing all of these people, and I think it's just, that's how we get that research that you've got. That's really how we understand the market. And so I'm curious to kind of switch it back and put it on you. How does this adaptive work management help get work done? And then how does it motivate others?
Yeah. I liked how you started to tell Charlie before we got on the air that you said you should be able to find it by now, Aaron, because you've been interviewing a lot of people about this topic. But I think for the viewers, I need to kind of go back to the genesis of where this idea came from, and it came from after I'd published my last book on the toolbox for planning and scheduling, and I was trying to find ways to sell my books, and a publisher reached out to me and asked, "Hey, do you have any ideas for another book?" And I'm kind of trying to get this one working, and then I had thought about that for a couple days, and in conjunction to that, I was working with a client on the East Coast, and they were struggling on getting things done. I guess the better said, they had a culture of very, very highly technical. They produce semiconductors, highly technical individuals, and this individual was new to the position, coming from overseas in Taiwan, and the way that he had done work isn't necessarily the way that they were willing to accept it. Meaning that it was easier for him. He was accustomed, hey, we're going to do a project, we're going to have a meeting, and then we're going to talk about what we're going to be doing to accomplishment. And he was surprised when there was resistance. And for myself, I've been doing consulting or continuous improvement for a lot of years, and usually people don't call me unless they, if they're doing fine themselves. So I'm very accustomed to meetings occurring that no one shows up, or there's always a firefight that's going on that they have to postpone everything. And I was trying to explain to him that, this is okay. Often you have to ask, like, what's in it for them? And in a lot of cases, you have to be, I'm using the word, I don't use air quotes, but adaptive to it. And that's kind of where the story began on this adaptive work management. And to be true, I made up this phrase, and my first interview was just, and I've done probably over 20 of them at this point, and I hope to do at least a lot more, because I do enjoy hearing other people's thought on this. Is that I would interview them and ask them what it is, and the same in Charlie's case, I didn't tell you the definition until I got your perspective on it. So it's the idea is it's about enabling the framework of managing people in a way that they prepare, they support the individuals and the equipment to drive success. But the important thing is about what's in it for them and finding that happy ground of what we think we can achieve in the amount of time that we're allotted.
That's pretty much, that's very key, because if they don't think they can accomplish it, then they're not going to be motivated to do it.
Correct. Yeah. And it's kind of the landing pad of where to go with it next. So I've been telling a story, kind of to what you think about adaptive is. If you think about change management, it's like having a ship, and there's a certain amount of gunpowder, and there's another ship bearing down on it. Imagine taking all that gunpowder and putting it into a giant cannonball. You fire at the ship, and it misses. Think about projects. The next turn, the captain looks back, and they're out of gunpowder. So what if they take that bet when the captain puts everything in one shot? Now imagine instead the captain takes and uses gunpowder and puts it into bullets. Fires the first bullet, it misses. Second bullet, it's off by 10 degrees. By the time he hits a third bullet, bing, it hits. Now the captain has now have a calibrated line of sight. Then they can take the remaining gunpowder and put it in the cannonball. Think about this, is that you can't continually just shoot bullets at the ship. At some point, you got to load up that gunpowder and fire the cannonball. But when you do, you've got a calibrated line of sight. And when you think about change management and project management, being adaptive early on, understanding the culture, and being able to sway in different directions gives you that line of sight. So when you do plan on making that big change, the workforce and others are more adapted to accept it. And that's a lot about what goes into it. It's a simple concept, but often it's not necessarily followed because it's all about time and money and what can we get done today.
Yes. And so the best, strategic plans out there, right? We spend time, we create those, I think is really, really important. But then once you get in and you're starting to do the work, if you're not still able to adapt even in that and adjust your plan based on the information that you're receiving, I can totally see how that would be a roadblock for a lot. If, okay, this is my plan and it's not working, well, we're just going to continue on with it not working. Like that sounds like a bad plan. Okay. So again, interviewing people, I think is how we learn. I mean, I love having a podcast just so I can learn so much. I love seeing, just on your background here, the Clifton Strengths, that was the Strength Finder. I took that and it's one of my favorites that I always make my staff take as well. But I love that your adaptability. My husband has that trait too. So, I think that it's important to understand what that means though, and dive into adaptability. And part of that is being open to the changes, right? And so maybe you're not committing to something 100%. Maybe you're committing to this direction and then willing to adjust, right?
Yeah, you're in doing research. I came upon this, and actually, I wrote, there's an article coming out in Supply Chain Magazine this month that I wrote, and I was not aware of this until I started doing the research. Is that we've all heard, probably most of our listeners, about Industrial 4.0, right? We're talking about artificial intelligence, big data, automations, all that kind of stuff. However, it has been defined what Industry 5.0 is. And this came out in Europe about 2001. And I started doing research on it. And I think I get pulled into it because it really talks about resiliency and adaptability. So Industry 5.0, it's only built on three things: sustainability, resiliency, and human-centric. And a lot of that was brought into play when, COVID, right?
Yes.
We had to change a lot of how we did things. And then we started having problems within the supply chain. So we had become resilient. And then we start having issues with people not wanting to go back to work. So we have to become more human-centric. So it's not Industry 4.0 is dead, but we have to be more understanding that the way we need to do things has changed, and it's continuing to change. So I was kind of, I've got a poster in my room or in my office that I circle around, like the Industrial 5.0, and I got a circle that says, adaptive work management plays a huge part in resiliencies and in human-centric, because if you're not being able to do that, it's sustainability is going to be that much harder, because the way things have been changing over the years. I think we'd be surprised if we take a step back, like 10 years ago, what we were talking about and what we talk about today.
Yeah, I've just made me think again about the opening there, where how you started this conversation. The feedback from our employees, right, is so important, and to have structures in place and processes that allow us to talk to our people, to get the information and the data that's out there, to think about our team as humans that can contribute to this idea and strategy as a whole. Not there's only one person that can talk strategy. And the other thing is, just so much change has happened. So I'm really curious about, as you're interviewing these people and asking them about, how hard it, why is change hard, and the difficulties around that. Is it still hard? Do people still think change is hard? Or are they like, we're mastered change now? Like, it still is awful and it feels like you're under attack, but we're doing it. I'm just curious as a whole. I always say I love change, and I love, so I'm unique, I think. But what are your thoughts now?
I often, when I do presentations, I've got a cartoon that I show, and in the cartoon, if you can imagine, it has a person standing on stage, and obviously must be a leader at some point, and it's filled an audience of individuals. And this man goes, "Who wants change?" And everyone raises their hand. And then in the next clip, it goes, "Who's willing to change?" And at that point, no one raises their hand. And then he asks a third question. And the next clip is like, "Who wants to lead change?" And by that time, it's ghosts. There's just everyone had left. So I use that because regardless of what we have, and what you define change as, there's always a reason why we want to benefit from it. And understanding what's in it. I keep on saying it, what's in it for them. And that's one of the usual things when I go into organizations, like, especially when you're dealing with individuals that have been working in the same position 20, 30 years. And I can't go up and tell them how to run a machine. That's theirs. But I can ask them questions about, wouldn't it be easier if we did it a different way? And at the end of it, it's, what can I make that can be easier for them? Because accepting change without any benefit is going to be that much harder. So always looking for what they can get out of it. So for me, a lot of my background is in continuous improvement, particularly in total productive maintenance. And in doing that, it's easy to talk about what are the deliverables. And when you go through different phases in it, the deliverables of the first phase is making the job easier for the operators and involving the mechanics to help them become trainers and taking some of the workload off of them. I don't have a prescription. Well, there is a prescription for how to do it, but the way to be adapted to it is often telling them what's in it for them. And that's usually it's the easy answer, but it's not the easiest approach.
Well, yeah, first of all, you have to understand why that person is there, and why are they showing up to work every day? What motivates them? If you don't know that, I mean, because honestly, the leader in that situation may be different, right? Your goals okay, this is what's in it for me. Why can't they get on board with that? I was really so passionate about social media, and I just didn't understand why anybody didn't understand how great this was, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to explain the why. Like, this is going to help us connect with each other and share information, and really, get down to the level, especially within engineering, of, this is important, and this is what it's going to, how it's going to benefit you, is actually going to bring people to know your technologies that you've created, and that type of thing. And so, but people don't just say, they don't just give you the information, right? Like, so why do you come to work? Because you need me here, because this is my job, stuff like that. You might get it's really like a work in progress to get the information of why people work, and that human side. Like, it's a conversation, it's a watching their body language, and creating spaces where people communicate. But I think that is the hard part about the leader, right? They want sometimes we want that immediate response, because we're trying to get something done, and we need the, ROI right now. And we're not willing to wait on that. So we don't have the time to kind of get them to the next level.
Yeah.
And it's not easy. So when I think change is hard, and it's a responsibility that we're willing to do the work. We're willing to, and we can see that future outcome, that if we spend time to develop our people, we develop ourselves as leaders, then we can create change, and it'll be positive change for everybody. But like me, I'm an activator on my strengths. Sometimes I just want to get it started and go, right? And sometimes
that's what led your career too. Because I remember you told me that story.
Yeah.
That when you talked about social media, and you're wondering, why doesn't anybody else want to do this? And then the company I guess you're working for, it had no interest in it, and that's kind of where that's kind of what led you down your pathway, correct?
That's right. That's right. They weren't ready for it, but I just knew that this was the future. And sometimes, and I was correct in that. Now,
Yeah.
looking back, but it was correct for me. It wasn't necessarily correct for them. And so making sure that our goals align within an organization, the leader has to say, okay, this is the culture. This is what we're trying to get to, and bring everybody along. So I had to be able to get to the point to where I could describe what my vision was. What are the steps for individual companies and individual people to actually make a difference? And I had to do the work to learn how to communicate that better. So enough about me. I could go on and on about that, but
Can I say
what?
one more thing about you?
Okay,
That,
okay,
that I took away from our interview is that I had to revisit that book, Strength Finders, and I I highly recommend it. I know you would recommend it, but the way that you were using it is with your employees to better understand them, and that's something I'm certainly going to coach others on, is that getting to understand where they are, because sometimes just asking them, they're not going to necessarily tell you. So I think it's a powerful tool when you start talking about change and change management.
Yeah, because we understand ourselves, right? We understand what our strengths are, our struggles are, if we've done the work, but not everybody has. And even trying to pull that out of other people is difficult. So this shows you, okay, these are the common traits, these are their strengths. This is the environments they work well in. These are the struggles that they may have. And you go back to them and say, okay, this is what your strengths are. Are they in alignment with what you believe your strengths are? And then which one of these strengths do you want to amplify to the world? Now that is powerful. That's where, out of the 5, I'm going to help them achieve that. And that's
Mhm.
going to motivate them. And that's going to make our company thrive. Okay. Okay. But for you, I'm curious on what kind of change you want to make.
Um, can you what change
Just,
in what?
yeah, just why are you doing what you're doing?
Oh, I you do something long enough, you begin to like it. And I guess that's the easiest answer. And you do what you're good at. And for me, I, you know, I know you do too. Like I love going into factories and seeing how things are done. And coming from, I started with the foods, then medical device, and then most recently in the oil and gas industry. It's a lot of the process can be somewhat different, but some of the backdoor conversations are relatively the same. And for me, results are, when you come in and you work with them, and you're often, I'm not there. Well, there is not really an end. It's called continuous improvement. But often I get asked, like, how do you know it's working? And you start knowing it's working when they stopped talking about whose fault it was, and they start talking about the process, and they start using the terms that they're being given, and coming up with using the word countermeasures, and going through a root cause analysis, even if they're just saying the name. To me, that's when I see the rewards in it. And often in my position, you don't often see the rewards until I almost had to define it. What does success for me look like? And that's usually success when they start talking processes and not talking about blaming people.
Yeah, that's a great indicator. The blaming others for mistakes, or trying to say whose fault it was. Just, okay, this happened, whose fault is it? So that we
Yeah.
can blame somebody, and really, like, okay, what's the real problem here? Continuous improvement. I love it because it's a mindset. It's okay. We weren't perfect today, but what can we take out of that, learn from it, and improve for the next time? So that perfection is not the win. It is, what do we learn from the activity that we, continue to be stronger as organizations, yes, but as humans. And that is, I think, the biggest mindset shift, is where we can say, okay, we're a work in progress. And then we like that. I enjoy that, because that means that we're moving forward, and we're not, I've always been in sales, right? So, like, if we're not going forward, we're going backwards. This is a lot of the strategy talk back there. But I do believe it. I believe that there is a way to continue even at the top of your game, if you will. If you're leading in sales, for example, or you're leading in this organization, well, what else could you do? What else could you try? Something new, that you weren't leading in? I challenge people to do that. Go try something that you're just really terrible at, Okay. You're brand new to this. Wow. Won't that show you something?
Yeah, so I didn't always have that theory. I was I learned it the hard way. I started as, as a supervisor in operations and in maintenance, but um, I thought I knew most of the answers coming in. And when you realize you don't, when you stop not, when you think that, people close up and they're not willing to help you a whole lot until you fail. And they had to let me fail a couple times till I started, asking for that help. And that's probably one of my biggest learnings I've had over the years is listening to others first and asking for help.
Ooh, asking for help. Us leaders, if you're out there, take that in. Go ahead and ask for help. That is the hardest, to just accept help. So my heart surgery taught me that, right? That okay, sometimes I have to just get hit by a car, or have something happen to be like, hey, Charli, you don't have to do it all alone, right? Just because you're the leader in these organizations does not mean you don't need your team is there to support you, and you've hired them, if you're wise, to be better than you, right? To have expertise in other areas that you don't have. And I think it's wonderful when that all works out, and you're able to think clearer. You've got time to process this next strategy and vision and how to communicate it better to your team. So many different things when you can delegate and ask when you don't, or just be willing to say, I don't know the answer to this. What do you think? Wow. This is super profound. But in this world of engineering, we'll just say, and manufacturing, it's hard for people to say, I don't know the answer, right? Because they're expected to know the answer. That's what they've been taught, and they're problem solvers and different things like that. Well, part of that is taking that other data that's out there, which is from the diverse group of people that, have different experiences that you may not have. So lots there. I could talk to you all day, which we know because we've talked to hours on
Yeah.
and I do want to just shift gears a little bit, but and do a little rapid fire. But I want to give you kind of the last word for our audience here. What do you want them to know?
We talked about change a lot. And one thing that, I said I learned early in my career, but to make work easy is empowering others to do the work. Because you just said, Charli, you can't have all the answers, and it's just going to wear you out. And I'm very interested in this term industrial 5.0 because I really do see it changing and evolving, how we do business and how we have to be able to be, I'm going to use the word project management, agile on what we do and we create. And I come back from the supply chain in the manufacturing industry. It kind of leads the way in a lot of aspects of it that where you start to see the changes occur. So for me, change management, and I can't emphasize that you start your structures around building a core around your maintenance planning and scheduling, and then you prosper up from there. But in the same sense, you're involving others in the decision making on it, because even in my cases, I come in and I go away, but I've seen many these projects fail. Mainly, it's not so much leaders don't want to have things go well. Sometimes they don't know how to ask, and that's one of the things that I see is a control that often is in place when these kind of things take place.
Well, I'll say this. I hired a consultant not long ago, and really a couple years, two different consultants on strategy, and really helping create the space so that we did the work to put the strategy down for one, and then to talk to the team and interview the team on where they wanted the company to go. So I had their perspective, but not from me specifically, from the consultant. And it helps so much to uncover some of the things that you're going too fast to notice, right? Because you are trying to get all the work done and you haven't created this space. So I love bringing in a third party to create that like everybody's on the same team, even the leader of the team. Everybody is the leader, but the suggested leader of the team. And taking that information and executing it, like you talking about with the planning and scheduling, some of that stuff takes time, and it takes commitment, regular commitment to review the strategy and go backwards. And I think that is why we have to give that work to others, some of that execution, so that the strategic planning can go on and on, right? We can continue to refine that and look back and say, what have we done well? What can we improve? And so I'm really excited to share that with everyone. I'm excited for your book. So you've already got several books, but I'm excited for your next one as well. And I will change it to our rapid fire real quick to ask you, what is your favorite book?
I allude to one of the, well, I'm using Strength Finder right now. I realize that's a great book, and so I always emphasize that. I know that's one of your favorites. Another book that I often reference is the Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. I think I said that word right, but I talk about that, especially when I do trainings on planning and scheduling, is that having a checklist and the benefits of it. Because we've all been impacted by that over the years. And I give the example when I guess my wife had to go in for just a minor surgery, and we get to the hospital. She checks in and they goes, "What are you here for?" And we say, "Okay, we're here for this." And then we go in the nurses, the first room. Nurses ask, "What are you here for?" "I'm here for this." And then the doctor comes in. "What are you here for?" "You really don't know what we're here for?" But the whole point was, there's in the book, it talks about people or surgeries that gone bad, that you get operated on the wrong leg, and now you have got two bad legs. Or they talk about the aviation industry. And then I just find that it's a great reference book when you start talking about how to make things, foolproof, is to exercise that mind and having a checklist. And I think it's a great book to reference to that.
Yeah. And I used to say things like, I don't like process, and I'm a risk taker, not a, follow the rules kind of person. But this is what changed it for me. I'm just going to give this little input there. If you have a process in place, even like your morning routine, you are saving energy and that you can use on something else. And I just thought that was amazing. I was like, okay, sign me up for the process. I would love more energy to accomplish the things, that I didn't get to yesterday. And definitely going through surgery, I appreciate that they have those extra checks and balances there for sure. Okay. So the other questions are, what is your favorite song?
Oh, my favorite song?
Or band or artist?
Oh, yeah, I gotta tell you, I always turn it up when I hear AC/DC Thunderstruck for whatever reason. I gotta
Awesome.
listen to that. And then
Yes.
it's been around for a while, so I'll probably default to that.
Awesome. And then best advice that you've ever received?
So this didn't come about in a positive way, but it did change how I approach things. Again, earlier on, I was out of college, and trying to impress everyone and trying to move on to my career. And I remember going into my boss's office one day, and I don't even remember what the problem was, but I told him, it can't be done. It can't be done. And he's a big guy. He's worked in the meat industry all his life. Stood up over the chair and says, "Don't you," and he used a word, "ever say can't again." And they told me to get out. To the life of me. I can't say that's going to help everyone all the time, but I've eliminated that word from my vocabulary. So I
have a
literally
picture.
find a way to do it.
I have a picture for you that I'm going to send you. It says, "There's no such word as can't here." That is my mom instilled that in us for a long time, so that made me that happy. Yeah, it is true.
Always live by that. Yeah.
Okay, now it's your turn. What advice do you want to give to others in our industry?
So I'm talking about adaptive. I would say this way: learn to fail quick and get up and go. And I kind of the icing on the cake for everything we've been talking about today is being adaptive, continuous improvement, empowering others. It all doesn't work. It's majority you're going to fail at some portion of it, at some point of it. In fact, if you didn't fail, you're not opening yourself up enough. And that's probably the best advice I give to others.
It's so good. We were just at a conference this week that talks about make mistakes, right? Go ahead and make some mistakes. It's what's going to help us go to that next level, learn from them, improve. So continuous improvement, Aaron. I love the conversations that we have. Well, can't wait to the next time. I hope everybody has already kind of LinkedIn connected with you, Twitter on the screen here. But is there another way that you'd like them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, if LinkedIn's a good spot, and I've actually got another group out there. It's called the Maintenance and Reliability Institute, and I use this area just as a place I try to resonate maintenance practices, and I do a post there once a week for a newsletter that I do. And if you're interested, feel free to subscribe to it, and you can hopefully learn something new that you maybe not weren't familiar with.
I love it. Thank you again for your time today. So
Thank you, Charli.
everybody, if you haven't done it yet, please like and subscribe Empowering Industry Podcast. It helps it to show up, makes it easy for you, right? It just shows up in your feed, which we love. And if you have a certain topic or an awesome person that I need to meet, please message me and let me know. That's how I met Aaron, and I loved every second of this interview. So thank you, everybody. And until next time, be empowering.